Let's work through the odd numbered problems on this core practice sheet. All right, first one. It's a multiple choice question. So let's talk about multiple choice strategies you can use to narrow your options down. First, I know that in the inequality, it's just a greater than. So there's no little equal bar underneath. That means my line is going to be dashed. As I look through here, okay, they're all dashed. So that doesn't help narrow it down. But if one of them had been a solid line, we can eliminate that as a choice. Next up, I've got the y on the left and a greater than. That means that the shading should be above the line. So it could be this A, because the shading's above the line. But for B, notice the shading is below the line. So it's not going to be B. For C, also, the shading is below the line, so it's not going to be C. And then for D, the shading is above the line, so D is still an option at this point. Next up, I'm looking at y-intercept. So my line should cross the y-axis at a height of 1. Okay, that's halfway between 0 and 2. And okay, well, that's also halfway between 0 and 2, so that's not as helpful. But as I look at the ones we've already eliminated, notice their y-intercepts were different numbers. So we've been able to eliminate those as well as other options. And then next, let's check the slope. I notice the slope is negative. So my line should be going down as I go from left to right. A goes up. That's in line with a positive slope. So it's not going to be A. D, this is the one. You go down 1, right 4. You're back on the line. This is the one we're after. So what did I check? I first checked the inequality, make sure that we had a dashed line with the shading above the line. Then look at the linear equation, check the y-intercept, and then the slope. We knew it was supposed to be a negative going down as you look at it from side to side. Okay, next up. On these, we're actually supposed to make the graph ourselves. So let's follow our process. First, we're going to put a point on the y-intercept. So for this graph, that's at a height of +4. And then the slope. When there's no number in front of the x, I need you to remember it's a little imaginary 1, which as a fraction is 1/1. So to get to the next point, you want to start here at your intercept and go up 1, right 1. And then you could continue that pattern indefinitely. Up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. To make your line, I'm actually going to use my line maker just so it can be nice and straight. This line, when we finish, we're going to want to make it dashed because there's no equal bar underneath. So on the boundary line, first going to get it sketched in. I'm going to make it a little skinnier. I'm going to make it dashed, and I'm also going to make it red. All right, slight adjustments. Okay, so there's the boundary line. That means that the solutions to the inequality, it's either going to be ordered pairs that are up here, or it's going to be ordered pairs that are down here. Now, a couple of ways to tell. Way number 1. If your inequality is solved for y and y is on the left, the less than symbol means you're going to be doing your shading below. So this time, my shading should be below the line. So all of these ordered pairs in the shaded area, and I'm using the highlighter to represent my shading, those are all solutions to the inequality. But how about this? What if you're not super confident that you're going to be able to pick the right direction? Then pick some test points. Pick some test points. Here we go. We're going to do that anyway as a way to check our answers. So first, I recommend choosing 0, 0 as your test point because it's the easiest one to work with. So what I have is the equation, or the inequality rather. Y is less than x plus 4, so let's check. If I put a 0 in for the y, is that less than 0 plus 4? Well, 0 plus 4 is just 4. Is 0 less than 4? Yes, that is true. 0 is less than 4. That means this test point that I picked, this 0, 0, should be in the shaded part. So even if you didn't know which side to shade on, now you do. You picked 0, 0. You were like, okay, that made things true. That means I want to shade on this side of the line. That was our first test check. Now for the second test check, I recommend doing more than one. I'm going to now check a point that I know isn't a solution. And we're looking this time to get a false statement is the end result. So if I pick a point over here, like say this one, where x is -3 and y is 4. Our second test check, I should be able to put a 4 in for the y, a -3 in for the x, and what we want this time is to get something that is not true. I think this point is not a solution. Therefore, I want to get something false. So 4 less than, -3 plus 4 is 1. Is 4 less than 1? No, it is not. This is good news. The point that we picked was not in the shaded region, meaning not a solution. So when we put those numbers in for x and y, we should get something false. This is good. It's an indication that we've done things okay. Well, let's go one more time. Start off with your graph. Y-intercept at a height of 3. So 1, 2, 3. To get to your next point, use your slope. That's negative. So down 1 and to the right 3. So down 1 from there and to the right 3. Down 1 and to the right 3. So this is the sort of line we're looking at. I see this time it's got the equal bar underneath, yeah? So we want a solid line. I'm going to try my best to get one made here. Going to adjust it. So let's make it a little skinnier, a little redder. Solid line still this time, though. All right, so here we go. I'm going to extend that out. There's our boundary line. Now the question, where should we do our shading? Looking at the inequality, that means the shading is going to end up being above. But let's imagine I didn't know that. Let's do our test checks now and use that to help us make the decision. So for the first test check, I recommend using 0, 0. It's always going to be the easiest point. So test check with 0, 0. So 0 for the y, greater than or equal to -1/3 times 0 plus 3. We want to see if this is true or false. Let's see. -1/3 times 0, that's just 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 0 plus 3? Well, that's just asking, is 0 greater than or equal to 3? No, 0 is less than 3. This is false. So that means this side of the inequality, the side with that test point I just picked, this is not the side that gets the shading. So the shading should go above the line here. Let's verify that, though, with a quick second test check. If you have the option, it's not a bad idea to pick a point that is on an axis, because if one of your numbers is 0, that tends to make your work a little bit easier. So for our second test check, I'm going to use this ordered pair, the 0, 5. Second test check. We're going to put a 5 in for the y, a 0 in for the x, and see if we get something true or false. Now, I hope it's something true this time, since I picked a number from the above region, above that boundary line. So is 5 less than or equal to 0 plus 3? You know what I did? Okay, I spotted an error. We all make errors, right? You see how this clearly says greater than or equal to? I just wrote the wrong sign, so I'm going to fix it. Anytime you make a mistake in your work, just make sure that you fix it as soon as you spot it. Okay, now that I got that sign going the right direction. Is 5 greater than or equal to 3? Yes, that's true. That means this second test checkpoint, that's on the side that gets the shading. So I'm going to shade above my line. So any ordered pair, any ordered pair at all that's up here in this yellow region above that boundary line is a solution to the inequality. So make sure you got your line graphed in the right spot, check your solid or your dashed, and then do a couple test checks to make sure that what you have matches up with the way things really are.